What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rollup. It's one of our first episodes as part of the Rollup. We are now fully refined, fully focused on rollup solutions and scaling Ethereum in more ways than one, not just in throughput, but also in governance, in gaming, in DeFi, in all these applications that blockchain solutions are here to help us accomplish. So today we are talking with Rhys from Commonwealth. Super stoked to have Rhys on the channel today. We're going to talk about governance, what Commonwealth is doing to increase voter participation, and what's new and exciting in the world of governance on several chains. So Rhys, it's great to have you on. How you doing?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me. Doing great. Excited to be here.
Sweet. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what Commonwealth does and like what you do at Commonwealth.
For sure. Yeah. So Commonwealth is a all-in-one governance platform building out the one place that any Web3 community needs to coordinate, socialize, and govern the project. So right now, what the core product, I guess, is a Web3 native forum that links to off-chain voting. So we have a bidirectional integration with Snapshot, as well as a UI for on-chain governance contracts. So really hosting the heart of the governance process. Yeah, and the main goal is consolidating the governance process, the entire thing, whether it's private. Whether it's private or public facing, as well as in Discord. We're looking to tighten the loop there as well. But what I do in particular is I help all of our partners with their governance platform, making sure their community is participating and really getting the most out of both their the project and Commonwealth. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, man, that's great. I think we've seen a lot about like kind of lack of voter participation. So it's important work you guys are doing. There's a lot of like delegates, especially in the proof of stake networks. We've seen like delegated kind of decision making, is particularly in Snapshot, and then as well as like kind of the combination of off-chain and on-chain governance is still kind of fragmented. Like, you know, there's conversations that happen on Discord, and then an idea goes from Discord to like more of a structured forum. And then ultimately there's some proposition that's made on Snapshot. But then you have to revert back for the multi-sig people to actually execute whatever the decision that's made. And, all of these pieces kind of happen on different platforms. One of the things that I saw that I'm particularly excited about is 𝗏𝗏's release of OSNAP. And it's helping to decentralize the governance framework like end to end, so that when a Snapshot proposal is executed, it automatically sends a transaction to the treasury or the Gnosis safe and executes that transaction. And I think that's only like one piece of the governance process, where it's more of the back end after a proposal is made and confirmed. They're able to execute it with this OSNAP tool. But what Commonwealth does is more on the discussion side before a proposal is made. So what are some of the tactics that you guys use to consolidate a lot of that discussion and incentivize or promote some engagement with the entire community to, really get the pulse of the community felt through some of these proposals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess first off, love OSNAP as well. I think it's important. Two different main reasons. You mentioned the decentralization of that piece of the governance process is awesome. As well as I think it also will see an increase in voting participation because it decreases the need for on-chain governance to be truly decentralized in most cases. So on-chain governance historically has been pretty, you've had to pay for it. There's fees tied to it. And now you need to just use Snapshot, and then it's pushed to on-chain after that. So obviously off-chain voting free. Yeah, I think overall it'll be just great for the entire space. But I guess in terms of what Commonwealth is doing for participation, we do focus a lot on the discussion piece as well as the voting and proposal creation. What we've seen that has been really great, I guess overall, what we've seen is Commonwealth, an average of 7 to 10% of token holders join the governance platform. Other platforms similar to Commonwealth, it's like a 3 to 5% of token holders join. So we have seen, I guess, almost 30-ish, not too great at math, but 30-ish% increase in participation overall with token holders joining, which is great. But I think the main thing, the main value add is increasing transparency through the entire governance process by kind of consolidating and linking each of the main, I guess, the core of the governance process together. So you can discuss, have a full threaded discussion, link that to the snapshot proposal, and then when users are casting their vote on the snapshot, they can go back and see what the entire discussion is, who said what key stakeholders, where they're positioning themselves in terms of the decision or what they're going to vote on. And it's just really easy to get informed, I believe. And we do approach this in a Web3 way. So it's really easy to kind of figure out what stakeholders are saying what. And yeah, all about transparency. And we really just built this platform out to align with the Web3 ethos. And I think it's been great so far.
Sweet, yeah. Well, like Discourse, is the one that comes to mind that a lot of projects are using, but it's not built like Web3 natively. And it's an important piece that's missing, like being able to hook it up directly to Snapshot. I take it we'll even see like notifications, coming up sometime in the future, just to increase the visibility of a lot of these Snapshot proposals. Yeah, like the inclusivity, is something that we preach a lot about, like, building a very inclusive community, trying to get like a lot of representation, but it's not, like, the numbers are just not lining up. You said something like 3 to 5% of token holders are voting. What
are joining Discourse forums on average?
Why do you think it's so low? They just don't care?
Well, that's not where the voting is happening. So I think a lot of people just follow snapshots, and then it's really hard to like see what they don't really. There's extra steps to see what the discussion is. You kind of have to like go search for yourself to see what discussion is had, and I guess where the snapshot proposal came from, and that's pretty difficult. Yeah, so I think for when the governance process is fragmented across a couple platforms, you just see people following snapshot proposals and not truly making informed decisions when they do vote, because they don't really have the full context going into the proposal.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Like, when people have limited time, they're not going to trace the thread all the way back and educate themselves necessarily on like what are the nuanced stances as part of this proposal. They'll just kind of blindly vote. Maybe someone will tell them like which way they voted, and then they'll just kind of follow with their tokens. And I think Ethereum has seen like, obviously the most activity, but not the most voter participation, as compared to like some of these other chains that are also proof of stake and lean more into like the delegate philosophy that we started to see on Arbitrum, Optimism types of governance. What are you seeing are some of the more active governance communities, and what do you think they like? What are some of the more active ones, and then why do you think those have more participation than others?
I think the just ecosystem overall that's kind of been nuts with governance is Cosmos. It's been really great to see. I believe it's like average 80% voter turnout rate. I believe that's for two different reasons. Their validator mechanism that they have, as well as the overall just ethos of decentralization and just governance in Cosmos. So a lot of the people that hold token in Cosmos are more inclined to participate. That's kind of what you sign up for. That's why you join Cosmos. And the staking mechanisms of validators, that's the delegation piece. So almost like a large majority of validators vote on like every single proposal, which is really great to see. I do think delegation is part of the solution for governance participation. What I really do like in Cosmos is you stake to a validator, and if you don't vote, they will vote on your behalf. So you still have the option to vote on a proposal, but if you don't, you can stake to a validator that kind of aligns with your values, and they will vote on your behalf if you don't vote. I think that's a really cool version of delegation. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I guess, yeah, overall Cosmos is great. Osmosis is a really interesting one. They have a really large governance community. Evmos, super efficient, really strong community. And Stargate as well. They're the kind of the crazy outlier over in EVM world, where they have 25,000 people in their governance platform, which is pretty massive. Yeah, I would say what's a theme that I've seen to increase participation along with delegation is sub-DAOs. So what sub-DAOs, for one of the biggest value adds for sub-DAOs for me is decreasing a lot of the noise, because I do think part of the reason why participation is so low is there's a lot of noise just in general across like Discord. I think that's been talked a lot. But what sub-DAOs does is kind of delegate certain responsibility, decision-making responsibility to a select group of people that actually care. You can like sign up to these sub-DAOs and kind of align what you like to participate in the DAO. A classic example I give is one of our communities. They have a couple hundred proposals a week. And there was one, not a couple hundred proposals a week, a couple hundred overall. But in 1 week, they had a proposal proposing for $5,000 to plant trees in Brazil. And in the same week, they had a major chain upgrade proposal. So there's like really that first $5,000 proposal obviously increased the noise leading up to that massive proposal that needed a lot of participation and eyeballs on it. Maybe not so much with the $5,000 stipend, but I think a solution for reducing the noise for proposals and decisions is definitely sub-DAOs. So
okay, yeah, like those proposals are both like, they sound great, but they're just not of the same magnitude of importance.
Yeah.
Let's let the environmental sub-DAO handle the trees, and the development sub-DAO handle the chain upgrade. Okay, yeah, that makes total sense, and it just kind of, it reminds me of like committees on that we see at like national government scales. Like they break up the entire country's governance into particular committees. Those who are knowledgeable about that topic vote on that committee. They make those decisions, and even like other representatives may delegate their votes to the people who are representing them on this particular committee, so that there is still participation across the entire governance spectrum, but the actual decision-making power is kind of concentrated into those who are most knowledgeable about a certain topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important. Knowledge on a certain topic is really great. That's a huge reason why I'm bullish on sub-DAOs. Also, it allows people to only participate in things they care about, and it just decreases noise overall, which also increases participation. So I think there's like 2 points that increase participation and that knowledge factor that you mentioned increases the just overall efficiency of the DAO.
Yeah. What are some of the main like things that get people going? Like, is there any topics you see that are divisive or that are particularly controversial in some of these governance forums? Like what are, you obviously have your eye on like quite a few, DAOs at a time. What are some of the proposals that you've seen that have like really caught your eye, like as of recently?
I think the ones just in general, the ones that are divisive obviously are the larger proposals, like those like chain upgrade proposals, ones that are asking for a decent amount of treasury spend. Those are very divisive, and the less transparent they are, the more divisive they are, is what we've seen. So that is something we've been focusing on, is how can we increase transparency into the overall governance process. That is a product thing and is obviously like a community process thing as well. But specific proposals, I would say grant programs in general are pretty divisive. It is, I think it's an important piece to any DAO. It's a great way to allocate capital to just like grow the DAO's ecosystem. But it does, again, require a lot of treasury spend. It's a relatively new concept. I think it's relatively unique to, I guess the structure of it is relatively unique to Web3. Yeah, I would say grant programs in particular are super divisive. But there's a lot of really great work being done into that. Reverie is one of them. We've seen a lot of people specialize in that just because it's super, super valuable. But it's a very difficult area, I would say, to specialize in.
Yeah. I think our community, has certainly voted on quite a few proposals. Have even made some proposals depending on how deep they are in a couple DAOs. And these types of proposals are the ones that normally gather the most participation, is when there's some treasury spend that's happening, or there's some major upgrade that's going on. A lot of like intercompatibility between protocols, I think, normally generates some engagement from like one DAO combining with the other. Those usually are a diverse mix of ideas that usually gets people talking. And a lot of this conversation, I think, it happens away from the visibility of the community in general. And it sounds like Commonwealth is doing something that, like you started at the beginning of this call talking about consolidation of a lot of this discussion. We can bring to the forefront, like, what are the particular ideas that have weight in the community to maximize kind of like the education of a certain proposal for the community in general, by bringing some of those particular topics that people bring up to the top. Those will rise to the surface and kind of educate the rest of the people in the room about what are the most topical things to understand by voting, that you want to understand before voting in this kind of proposal. So I'm curious, like, for, anyone who's listening that may have voted, who's probably voted in a few proposals, may have made a proposal on a DAO, what is the right approach for using Commonwealth? Like, how should they get started? Maybe that someone is more of a thought leader in a DAO. How should they integrate Commonwealth into like their governance strategy? Let's say you were a member of, some DAO that is focused on like allocating funds for the environment or something. Like, how would you best use Commonwealth for maximizing your governance strategy?
Yeah, great question. I guess you brought up a lot of want to address the previous thought you had, was a lot of decisions are being made like privately. I just want to give a shout out to a really cool DAO work product that I was chatting to yesterday called Avenue Place, where a lot of these, they host a lot of these private conversations, whether it's lobbying or just DAO contributors thinking next steps, what's the best next steps for the DAO. And then kind of conduct that in a Web3 way, wallet login. And then after all of these conversations, they kind of consolidate it into one outcome that you can just publicly publish, which I think is really cool, looking to integrate that into the Commonwealth governance flow. But I think that's a great way that you can increase transparency into these private conversations while obviously still having them private. But Commonwealth, I would say the how to best leverage the Commonwealth for your governance process. Really just plug in all of the different existing tools you have. I guess pretty modular buzzword. I guess that's a buzzword recently with but yeah, Commonwealth is pretty modular. Can plug in Snapshot, as I mentioned, the UI for on-chain governance if you have it. I would say just consolidating. That's how you can best leverage Commonwealth. As I mentioned, consolidating the governance process with forum, off-chain, on-chain voting. It kind of increases participation there. But what I recommend for anybody starting on Commonwealth is, yeah, just set up obviously the on the product side, but it's really important to set the forum up for success, to drive the most discussion. And one of the first pieces of content that I recommend, like any DAO to use when launching or to publish when launching a DAO platform, is creating like a mission and values post. What this does, it well, I guess not creating, co-creating with all of the different stakeholders of the DAO. So what that does is it aligns all of the stakeholders into one vision, one direction forward. I think that is super important, and we've seen that a lot on Commonwealth, and really drives participation. And it's super easy, obviously, to transition all of that great discussion into actionable items via like the consolidation of the governance process on Commonwealth. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it does. Yeah, like that gives me like a sense of like, okay, as a DAO member, like this is how I should use it to push forward the coordinated efforts that, you know, it are based on like the DAO's mission and vision. And those always provide like a basis of like, you know, how the DAO should vote on certain proposals. There's always going to be disagreements and different strategies about how to best execute on those values, but setting those guidelines first and foremost, I think, give a pretty holistic strategy about, you know, what the mission of the DAO is, and even determining that, you know, is a matter of discussion and maybe a vote on its own that someone can have. And it's kind of like this article that I saw. It was put forth way back, but it's on Futarchy, and it's like you should vote on values and you should bet on beliefs, and it's kind of like outlining this system for prediction markets as our governance strategy. But even determining like what that mission statement is and those values is a matter of interpretation. When you get a bunch of people in a room, you know, setting those out and voting on what these values are, I think is really important to DAO's overall strategy. I'm curious, like what are some of your, you know, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about like political values in like in a governance chat, but like what are your Web3 like political values? You know, if they include Futarchy or not, you know, it's fun to kind of learn about like what other people see as like the overall mission of Web3, kind of as it relates to like what our values are common to like all blockchain apps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Without getting yourself in trouble, of course. You don't need to expose, you know, anything like that.
I guess what I'm most interested in, I guess in terms of values, is the equal distribution of wealth generation and decision-making power that Web3 enables. That's why I am so interested in kind of working in the governance and community space to push that vision forward, I guess. That is what I'm most interested in, for sure. And I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, totally. Like you're saying, I mean, distributing equitably, like all of not just the wealth, and wealth equals decision-making power in a lot of decisions, but like distributing that in a more decentralized way, I think is a common mission that a lot of these communities and DAOs have. Decentralization is so core to like the ethos of cryptocurrency and blockchain, that we see these like elitist groups making decisions, you know, as part of like our representative democracy, or even more centralized depending on, you know, where you are in the world, and decentralizing the power of those decisions into more of the community driven, delegated type of decision making format is something that, you know, DAOs are pioneering in the Web3 world, and I hope to see it kind of seep into the, you know, trad non-internet based world as well, and go from kind of like the representative democracy that we see all over the world into more of like the liquid democracy that we seem to experiment with on DAOs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the decentralization of decision making that I guess Web3 and blockchain enables is a more accurate representation of how the populace feels on certain issues. And I do think, obviously, the more equitable wealth distribution of that Web3 enables, and I guess that ties to the ethos, also increases accessibility to, increases accessibility to this wealth, and allows a lot more people to participate in the upside of the wealth generation that's happening.
Yeah, totally. Like, I just, you know, I hear all the time, and I'm sure everyone hears on social media and stuff, there's people making the decisions that, like, the decision doesn't impact them at all. And without getting too divisive, I mean, like, abortion in the States was a huge one. I was in Paris for 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵𝗵 last summer, and it was like right around the time that like Roe v. Wade got overturned. So there was like, when people realized that I was American, like I was with my girlfriend also like around the conference, and they were like, oh, like, you know, that thing that just happened over in America, like why did they do that? You know, like why did they overturn that thing? And it was just like the immediate response to them learning that we were American brought them to like this kind of like controversial political outcome that was recently made by people who didn't really have a strong impact in like it didn't really impact them too much, you know, like, and that seems to not really align with the populace common belief of what that decision should be. So yeah, decentralizing the power and the decision making kind of from the top down, I think is something that we're pioneering on Web3 decision making, and we're starting to see more intersection between the Web3 and the traditional world. So we'll continue to see kind of how that plays out both in the Web3 world and you know, in real life, the physical world as well, with like municipalities and governance decisions.
Yeah, I think a lot of interesting innovation is being made in governance powered by blockchain. And yeah, I recently moved to the States from from Canada, so I was in that position, I guess, of the people in France that you were chatting with, just looking outside in, but it's been pretty interesting, I guess, being actually in the States when all these crazy events are happening, politics wise.
Kind of last question as we wrap up. This is nothing to be like, nothing, I'm not trying to create like political divides here, but like, do you feel like you have more decision-making power in America, or did you have more decision-making power, as we put it, in Canada?
Well,
another way to phrase it is maybe like, which country decentralizes their power grid more effectively?
Mm-hmm. I think there is pros and cons. Like I guess an example of Roe v. Wade, that's not an accurate representation of the populace. That is obviously not decentralized. So that piece of the American government is not super decentralized. But I think overall, I mean, Canada, in terms of our federal election, I would say the western half of Canada did not, like, they won 0 ridings, we call it. Like our prime minister won 0 ridings, like in the entire half west of Canada. So
Yeah,
interesting.
like the electoral college kind of points.
Yeah, similar to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Besides BC, obviously, but at the West Coast, our California. But yeah, that's interesting. I would say it's not there. There are certain instances, especially in the province that I'm from, Ontario, where we have like an all-time low voter participation rate. I think it was something like 30% of registered voters voted. So the premier that was elected to represent Ontario is not a accurate representation of the province's values. But yeah, there's pros and cons of both. I know that's a cop-out answer, but I know there has been some the states has gotten some flack with their like district, how they draw the lines for I think talks of like gerrymandering or whatever. That's been a topic. But I think both countries are faced with issues, different issues, but
yeah, and it's common issues that both countries are faced with, as well as Web3 DAOs that are faced with. Like this voter participation problem is a problem not just in DAOs, but also in like countries and nations.
yeah.
So the problem that we're trying to solve this problem on many fronts, and I like the freedom that Web3 DAOs give us to experiment solutions to this voter participation problem, so that ultimately we can take the solution that works at a scale of DAOs and hopefully apply it to a scale of nations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the beauty of Web3, less bureaucratic in general. I think that while the ethos of Web3 is just more efficient at decision making than I guess Web2 political structures. But yeah, I think a lot of great real world value add concepts and structures are being created by Web3 for governance and decision making.
Yeah, totally. By the people, for the people. It's happening on a small scale. We'll bring it to the masses.
I'm excited to be in the space and working towards that goal.
Awesome, man. This has been a pleasure. Where can our community find you, yourself, as well as Commonwealth? Shout out your Twitters and how people should find yourself in Commonwealth.
For sure, yeah. So my Twitter is Rhys FH. So RHYS FH. Weird spelling. But you can follow Commonwealth on Twitter at @HiCommonwealth. We post a lot of I guess what we're working on, where the conferences we attend if you want to meet up in person. And if you want to get involved with building out the product, I guess this is like some alpha, but we are launching a community of people interested in DAOs and creating working groups on, I guess, building out governance processes. So yeah, if you want to get involved, hop into our Discord. You'll see a lot of great discussions happening there.
Sweet. Thanks for joining, Rhys. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.